I used to live with my 2 dogs in a brownstone gated community in uptown Dallas. It was a decent setup, safe, clean, nothing fancy, but nice enough that you did not need to worry about much. I worked a few miles away and usually went home for lunch to let my dogs out and grab something to eat. I lived there for a little over a year before anything strange started happening. The first thing I noticed was the strong smell of men's cologne. Not just a faint scent like somebody walked by earlier in the day. This was fresh, like someone had just sprayed it. It would hit me right away when I walked in the front door, and sometimes linger all the way up the stairs. It did not happen every day, maybe once or twice a week, always when I came home after being gone for a while. I assumed it was my neighbor. The units were close together, and maybe he overdid it. I did not think much about it. Then one day I found a dollar bill on top of my purse. It was folded lengthwise, like a skinny rectangle. I don't carry cash, ever. And I definitely don't fold bills like that. I live alone. No one had been over recently, and it wasn't like I dropped it. It was placed, very deliberately, right on top. I stared at it for a while, then tossed it in the drawer and moved on. Weird, but not threatening. A few weeks went by. I'd mostly forgotten about it. Then one afternoon I came home on my lunch break like I usually did. Both my dogs were standing right in front of my bedroom door, staring at it, tails wagging but not barking, just staring. They don't usually do that unless they hear something or someone they know is behind the door. I figured they wanted to lay on my bed, so I walked them quickly and went back to work. That night when I got home, everything looked normal until I went upstairs. I walked into my bedroom and stopped cold. There were dollar bills, folded the same way as the first one, lengthwise, long and narrow, and they were placed neatly all around my room. On the nightstand, on the windowsill, balanced on the top of a lamp, sticking out from between books. Maybe 20 of them, all folded exactly the same, placed like someone had taken their time to arrange them just so. I froze. My heart was pounding. It wasn't just creepy, it felt invasive in a way I can't describe. Someone had been in my house, in my room. They'd been there long enough to walk around and put these bills in specific spots. I grabbed my dogs and left immediately. I did not even pack a bag. We drove to a friend's place, and I called the police from there. The cops came out, checked the house, said there were no signs of forced entry. My locks were changed. I added cameras and an alarm system, but it did not matter. I could not relax there anymore. I lie awake wondering if someone had a key, if they were still coming in. I did not feel safe. Every noise felt like something. My dogs would stare at corners like they were listening for something I couldn't hear. I gave my 30-day notice and moved out at the end of the month. It wasn't until I started packing up that I found more bills. One was taped behind a framed photo on the wall. Another was tucked into the corner of my mattress. I found one wedged under the base of a lamp. Another folded up inside of a coffee mug in the back of a kitchen cabinet. Always the same fold, always deliberately placed. I found 9 more before I left. No one ever figured out how they got in. I did not have any exes who would do something like this. No one had a spare key. The only other possibility was maintenance or someone who worked for the property, but there was no proof of that. I gave the landlord all the info, but nothing ever came of it. Cops said without a break-in or a name, there wasn't much they could do. I think the part that stays with me the most is knowing that whoever did this was probably in my bedroom that day while I was home, sitting quietly in there, folding the bills. My dogs weren't barking. They were waiting, like they knew him, or like he'd been there before. I've moved since then. New place, new locks, security system, the works. But I still check behind things. I still wake up at night thinking I hear footsteps. I don't carry cash, but every now and then, I'll see a dollar bill and get that tight, cold feeling in my chest. I don't think I'll ever get the answers, and I'm not sure if I want them. This happened when I was about 11 or 12, and it still crosses my mind sometimes when I walk into a quiet room. We used to live in a pretty average suburban neighborhood in Northern California. Our backyard had this old wooden fence all the way around, except for one spot right in the center where a telephone pole cut through it. The utility company had access through that area, and once in a while, someone would need to get back there for maintenance. One week, this guy showed up and said he was an electrician working on the lines. He wore a vest and had tools and everything, so no one really thought much about it. My dad let him into the backyard a few times over the course of 2 days. He said he might need to come back one more time, and then that was it. I never saw him up close, just from the window, or when we were walking by. Something about him made me feel weird, though I couldn't put my finger on it. He did not smile, did not say much, just kind of nodded and kept his head down. That Friday night, my best friend was staying over. We had one of those classic sleepovers where you build a fort with sheets and chairs in your room and stay up too late watching movies and talking about school. My room was at the back of the house, facing the backyard. We had the blinds down and the lights were off, except for the little battery lantern inside the fort. We were mid-conversation when she suddenly went stiff and made this weird half scream. Not full out terrified, but startled, like someone had jumped out at her. I spun around, and she was staring at the opening of the fort. She swore she saw a face peeking in through the gap in the sheets, just for a second. I did not see anything myself, and she kept saying maybe she imagined it, but her reaction seemed too real for it to be nothing. We turned on the light and checked the hallway, the bathroom, my closet. Nothing. My parents were still awake in their living room, so we told them what happened. My mom said it was probably just shadows or our imaginations running wild, that kind of thing. We ended up falling asleep eventually, but we both kept waking up at every little noise. The next morning, we went outside to play in the backyard, and that's when we noticed something off. 2 of our motor scooters were gone. We kept them leaned up against the side of the house by the back fence. They were cheap razor scooters, not worth a ton, but still. My dad thought maybe someone jumped the fence during the night, but it didn't really make sense. There wasn't any sign of damage or anything. That corner of the fence where the pole stood, that part did not have a proper lock. It was just one of those basic hook and eye latches you could open from either side. We reported the theft, but nothing ever came of it. No one came by asking questions, and we did not have cameras back there. My friend eventually forgot about the face she thought she saw. I tried to forget about it too. A few months later, my dad was watching the local news, and they did a segment on Sacramento's top 10 most wanted. They flashed a few mugshots, and my dad called us into the room. One of the faces looked familiar, and then he realized it was the same guy who said he was an electrician. Same beard, same eyes. He was wanted for a string of burglaries, breaking and entering, and even assault in a couple of cases. The police believed he posed as a utility worker to get access to people's homes or backyards. Sometimes he'd break in later, or just steal whatever he could grab. I remember my mom going pale. We all just stood there quietly. It suddenly made sense. The weird vibe, the missing scooters, my friend thinking she saw someone in my room. The guy probably came back that night, thinking everyone was asleep. Maybe he was trying to sneak inside. Our back door wasn't deadbolted, just latched. He could have come in, seen the light under the door from our fort, and slipped back out. We don't know for sure. Nothing else was taken from inside, and nothing was broken. But looking back, it feels pretty obvious what happened. It wasn't some ghost story. It was just a guy pretending to be something that he wasn't, using it to get close. And the scariest part is that he did not need to force his way in. We let him into our yard. We trusted he was who he said he was. Anyway, I still think about that sometimes. Just how easily someone like that can get close without anyone noticing until it's too late. Hey, I don't know if this is worth sharing or not, but I've been watching your channel for a while, and this story always sits in the back of my mind. Every time you post a new video, I think about writing in, so here it is. This happened about 10 years ago. I had a close friend who lived in a trailer park out in the more rural part of our county. We were both in our late teens, early 20s, and I'd go visit him a lot. I always took this back way there, mostly gravel roads, less traffic, and kind of peaceful in a way. It cuts through a few old lots, fields, and a lot of nothing. There was this one stretch I always passed, where there was this small, concrete building off to the right. It looked abandoned. I don't know what it used to be. Maybe a utility shed, or part of a larger building that was torn down. Who knows? It did not have doors or windows anymore, just jagged openings. A couple of the walls were half collapsed. The thing couldn't have been more than one small room. Every time I drove by it, I glanced at it. Something about it just caught my attention. Not in a dramatic way, more like a curiosity. One of those places you tell yourself, I'm gonna check that out one day, but I never did. And not because I was scared, exactly, just, I don't know. Every time I thought about stopping, I got this weird gut feeling. Not fear, just unease. Like it wasn't somewhere I should be. Hard to explain. It didn't look like much, but something definitely felt off about it. Then one day, I drove by and noticed the place was fenced off. Cheap fencing, like the kind of people use for crowd control or construction. There was some yellow tape too, but it was ripped and flapping in the wind. The fence wasn't even fully around the building. More like someone had made a half-ass attempt to block it off. My first thought was maybe some kids had been messing around in there, and the county came out to stop it. It's rural out here, but people still complain about that stuff. I told my friend about it when I got to his place, and he just shrugged, said he hadn't noticed. We did not think much of it after that. The fence stayed up for a while, and then eventually it wasn't there anymore. I assumed whatever issue there was got handled. Fast forward maybe a couple of months, I was at my grandma's place, just hanging out while she watched one of her crime shows. It might have been Dateline or 2020, something like that. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard them mention the name of a nearby town, one county over. I perked up a bit because I knew that area. Then they started going into the story about a girl who had gone missing after a party. I don't remember all the details, but from what they said, she left the party on foot after arguing with someone. Her friends thought she just went home with someone else, but when she never showed up the next day, they reported her missing. For a couple of weeks, No one knew anything. Police did searches, volunteers helped out. Nothing turned up except a few scattered items, some jewelry and a shoe, I think, found in different spots, miles apart. Then it cuts to this teenager being interviewed, a local kid who used to bike around, exploring old buildings. He says he was riding near some abandoned lot when he noticed something inside a concrete structure. Thought it was trash at first, but when he got closer, he saw clothing. Turns out, it was the same outfit the girl had been wearing the night she went missing. When they showed the building, I froze. It was the one I used to drive by. Same cracked walls, same jagged doorway, same graffiti, no mistaking it. They did not go into much detail after that, just said it led to more evidence being collected and helped them piece together what happened. Apparently, she was assaulted and left there. I don't know if they ever said whether she died in that building or somewhere else, but that's where they found the last of her clothes. They eventually arrested a guy who had been at the same party, an older dude who shouldn't have even been there. I think he had a record already. They caught him because his DNA was on the clothing. After the episode ended, I sat there just thinking about all the times I passed that place, how many times I thought about going in there. I still get chills thinking about what could have happened if I had stopped on the wrong day. Anyway, that's it. Maybe not the scariest story you've heard, but it sure as hell stuck with me. Thought you might want to use it. Thanks.